King Charles finally removes Camilla after she tried erasing Charlotte and Louis. They said the palace was quiet that morning, but anyone who really knew those halls understood the difference between quiet and tense. King Charles felt it the moment he woke. Not the kind of dread that screams, but the kind that hums just under your skin, like something is off and pretending not to be. He sat up slowly, let his robe fall over his shoulders, and stared out the window at a sky too calm for what was coming. He wasn't thinking about the crown or the duties that usually lined up for his attention like soldiers. His mind was with Charlotte and Louis. Charlotte, with that old soul kind of wisdom in her eyes. Louis, always full of energy, always tugging at his hand to show him something new. They weren't heirs in his mind in those moments, they were just his grandkids, the ones who reminded him how to smile on the hard days. But that morning, a piece of paper landed on his desk. Not a letter from a friend or a royal schedule. No, this was something else, something colder. A legal document. Amendments to his own will. The kind of thing no one touches unless it's discussed at length. Only, this hadn't been discussed, not with him. He unfolded the pages, already knowing something was wrong. The tone was too formal, the language too specific. Then his eyes hit the missing names. Charlotte, Louis, gone. As if they'd never been meant to inherit anything at all, and at the bottom, handwritten and unmistakable, were the words that shook him more than the document itself. A note to proceed. Signed by Camilla. He sat there frozen, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was the kind that seeps in slow like cold water. It wasn't just the action, it was the secrecy, the planning, the quiet attempt to override him, to erase a promise he had made to the ones who made him feel human. Later that day, the confrontation came. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. When Camila stepped into the room, all polished grace and pearls, he just asked her one question. Why? She blinked, played innocent at first, then gave her explanation. Too many divisions weaken the crown, she said. The future needs clarity, focus. Her words weren't cruel, but they carried the cold logic of someone thinking in chess moves, not family ties. Charles wasn't having it. Not that day. These are not pieces on a board, he said. De mí a my grandchildren. Camila pushed back, but her words started to feel like static. Charles had already decided. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. It wasn't about power anymore. It was about trust. And once that's broken, nothing ever feels the same. He told her to leave. Not in a fury, not with dramatic flair, just firm, final words. For now, and perhaps for good. The decision didn't come easy, but he knew if he let it slide, if he allowed this kind of manipulation to take root, then everything he stood for as a father and grandfather would crumble. The crown might be an institution, but his blood, his family, they were not negotiable. Camila left the palace that afternoon. Not with shouting, not with press cameras clicking, just silence and the sound of doors closing behind her. A woman removed not by scandal, but by choice, his. And behind the walls of that ancient palace, Charles stood by a window, watching the wind stir the garden trees. His fingers still held the crinkled will, but his heart held something heavier, a sense that this moment, quiet as it was, might be the one that changes everything. The letter sat on the table like it had weight beyond paper. William hadn't spoken in several minutes, just stared at the seal his father had broken and resealed, his fingers tracing the folds slowly. Catherine watched him from across the room, not wanting to rush him. She could see the calculation behind his silence. His mind wasn't just reacting, it was organizing everything, lining it up, trying to understand what it all meant. I knew something was wrong, he finally said, his voice low. I just didn't think it would come to this. Catherine crossed the room and sat beside him. Your father made the choice he felt was necessary. William nodded slowly, then tapped the corner of the envelope. He's not a man who makes decisions easily, not ones like this. So if he sent her away, then it means he's done trying to fix it quietly. His eyes flicked toward the window. Outside, Charlotte and Louis were playing under the late morning sun, their laughter too bright for the heaviness inside. She tried to cut them out, he said, still stunned by the thought. Not just from a will, from the future. Catherine placed her hand over his. You always knew she didn't see them the way you do. I thought she'd at least respect my children enough to leave their legacy alone, he said. Charlotte looks up to her. Louise still tries to make her laugh every time he sees her, and she was willing to erase them with a pen stroke. The air in the room felt heavier now. Catherine leaned back, trying to find the right words. Maybe she believed she was doing the right thing. Maybe she really thought this was about the monarchy surviving. William shook his head. You don't protect the monarchy by turning it into a machine. These children aren't just names on a chart. They're what makes the future worth anything. He stood up and walked to the fireplace where the flames had nearly gone out. If this gets out, the press will twist it. They'll say my father acted emotionally, that he's unstable or being manipulated. Catherine followed him, her voice steady. Then speak. Make it clear this wasn't weakness. Make it clear that protecting family is not a flaw in leadership. He turned to her. If I speak, it becomes real. The world will know she's gone, that there's division inside. The questions won't stop. They're already asking, she replied softly. But this is your chance to draw the line. To stand by your father and your children. Not the institution, not the image, the people. He was quiet again, staring at the embers. I remember when Louis was a baby, he said, voice distant. We brought him to the palace for the first time. My father held him like he was holding something sacred. I've never forgotten that. He turned back to Catherine, resolve beginning to settle in his posture. She tried to sever something sacred, and he wouldn't let her. Catherine nodded. Then neither should you. William looked toward the hallway, where the voices of his children echoed faintly, their joy untouched by the weight of royal politics. He straightened his shoulders. Prepare a statement, he said, short and controlled. I want them to hear it from me, not the tabloids. And what will you say? Catherine asked. He didn't hesitate. That my father chose his family, and I stand with him. Camila sat by the window of the countryside estate, her tea untouched. The quiet stretched long, broken only by the occasional chirp of birds beyond the ivy-covered walls. This was not her palace. This was not her place. The absence of royal protocol, the lack of servants bustling in and out, it should have been calming, but to her it felt like exile. Her eyes drifted to the garden. Everything was neat, sterile, not like the palace gardens, where she used to walk with purpose. Here she was just still. A guest in her own story, she clenched the fabric of her sleeve between her fingers, remembering how quickly everything had turned. They'd spoken in that room like she was an outsider, like her years beside Charles had meant nothing. She had been there through the storms, through the public outrage, the whispers, the headlines, and now, over a single disagreement, she had been pushed out. Disagreement. That word felt too small for what had happened. It was betrayal, but not hers, his. He had chosen sentiment over strategy, emotion over order, or so she told herself. But the silence in her chest didn't feel like righteousness. It felt like something she couldn't name. She reached for the letter she'd scribbled earlier, then tore it in half. What could she even say? I meant well? No one would believe it now. The headlines came fast. Camila removed from palace after will dispute. Insiders say rift centers around grandchildren's inheritance. Outset with rift span. Wishes parents. William speaks out. My father chose family. The last one hit hardest. She hadn't expected William to go public, and the way he framed it like she had tried to take something from children, not just rebalance the crown's resources, made her chest tighten with something like grief. Back in London, Charles sat by the window of his study. The press was relentless, but he'd said nothing since William's statement. The silence had become its own declaration. He watched as Charlotte ran through the grass with Louis, their laughter carried in on the breeze. They knew nothing of headlines, nothing of inheritance. They only knew love. That's what he was protecting. The palace had settled into a strange rhythm. Servants walked lighter, unsure of the rules. Rooms Camilla once occupied were closed off quietly. No public announcement had come from Buckingham, just the silence that made everything louder. At a late meeting, Charles addressed his senior advisors. This matter will not be revisited. The will stands as it was originally intended. No one objected. No one dared. Later, in the nursery, Charlotte climbed onto his lap, her fingers playing with his cufflinks. Grandpa, are you sad? She asked softly. Charles blinked, caught off guard. Why would you think that? You're quieter, she said, but not like sleepy quiet, like thinking quiet. He smiled faintly and kissed the top of her head. Sometimes grown-ups just have too much in their heads, darling. But I'm happy I'm here with you. She seemed satisfied with that. Louis darted in a moment later with a drawing of the family. Look, he shouted. That's you, and me, and Charlotte. Charles looked at the messy crayon-covered page. Camila wasn't in it. He didn't mention it. He just pulled them close. In the end, the crown stayed on his head. The public moved on to newer stories. But inside the palace, the air had changed. Camilla was gone, not banished, but no longer part of the inner circle. A door had closed, and Charles, the man who once balanced duty and heart like fragile glass, had made his choice. This time, he chose heart. And let the crown follow.